Good evening, all, and welcome to the Bible Hour, the hour of reading the Bible for an hour, that type of hour. Good evening, Park End admin. We are in 1 Kings 11. You say a truth. Good evening, Petit Bois. Good evening, Diane. Good planning the parties, not to mention the 4 or 5 feasts and festivals we will be celebrating annually in Park End Church going forwards. I hope you've had a good day. Good evening, Phil Tamlin. Petit Bois, yeah. Who was that? Sushi? Oh, or noodles at a party. Bedwas do it differently from Cardiff. Lemonade. Ice cream, maybe? Yeah. In the Bible Hour, we ask 2 simple questions. We go back to the roots of Christianity. We clear the table, we clear the decks. What is the Word going to teach us about Jesus? Today's live stream Bible Hour is sponsored by Chris and Cara Williams, who generously donated a generous donation to the Batstone household today and said thanks for the Bible Hour. Their donation will not be displayed for reasons that I can't go into, because for some countries it's morning and it's not a topic for pre-9 p.m. Park End admin has jumped ahead and he's already read verse 3. Who is the admin out there today? We don't start for 3 minutes, Ricky B. I should have known. Arguably the most studious of the administrators. Good evening, all. We love food in Park End. Does that include fish? Does fish have any place in a party outside of the New Testament? That's the question that we ask in Bible Hour. Parrot. If you are new to the Bible Hour, welcome on in. We read the scriptures and we have 2 clear things in mind, Jesus and church. Well, that's all that matters at the end of the day. The Son of God who reveals the Father God by the power of the Spirit God. One God, 3 persons, blessed Trinity, most clearly revealed in Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, the angel of the Lord, who led the Old Testament church and leads the New Testament church. And right now there's a king on the throne called Solomon, who's supposed to be a representative, a picture, a foretaste of the rule of King Jesus. Let's see how he does. Paula Barrett doesn't like fish. Hey, I'm with Paula Barrett on that one. Unless it's a fish finger, not interested. Petty boy, I didn't finish my homework for today. What homework did I set yesterday? I forgot. Hey, Chris Henry. Chris Henry, note that yet again the studio is a different color today. You just let me know if you think it's time to use those gels you sent. Ah. Yeah, Elijah. Yeah, we'll find another one for Jeremiah when he comes up. Okay, settle on in. If you want to know why we ask these questions, there are links below. If you want to see readings and occasional comments on all passages that we've read so far, it's up in the Park End YouTube channel. If you just want audio of sermons, that is on parkendcardiff.org UK website or Facebook and Twitter. It is quite a hefty one now, isn't it, Petty Boy? Okay. What could possibly go wrong with Solomon at the throne? 1 Kings chapter 11. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Solomon's many wives. He has read Moses. Now, King Solomon loved many foreign women. Besides Pharaoh's daughter, he married women from Moab, Ammon, Edom, Sidon, and from among the Hittites. The Lord had clearly instructed the people of Israel, you must not marry them, because they will turn your hearts to their gods. Yet Solomon insisted on loving them anyway. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. And in fact, they did turn his heart away from the Lord. 700 wives. In Solomon's old age, they turned his heart to worship other gods instead of being completely faithful to the Lord his God and his father, as his father David had been. Solomon worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Molech is a particularly vile demon child sacrificing god. Ashtoreth, well, we've touched on that before, and Jonty had to leave the room, it was so explicit. In this way, Solomon did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He refused to follow the Lord completely, as his father David had done. So what turned out as a little sin, he ended up worshipping demons. On the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, he even built a pagan shrine for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, and another for Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. I mean, that's pretty close to the temple there. Solomon built such shrines for all his foreign wives to use for burning incense and sacrificing to their gods. Jonty engrossed in Lego this morning. Cool. The Lord was very angry with Solomon, for his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. He had warned Solomon specifically about worshipping other gods, but Solomon did not listen to the Lord's command. So now the Lord said to him, "Since you have not kept my covenant and have disobeyed my decrees, I will surely tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your servants. But for the sake of your father David, I will not do this while you are still alive. I will take the kingdom away from your son, and even so, I will not take away the entire kingdom. I will let him be a king of one tribe for the sake of my servant David and for the sake of Jerusalem, my chosen city." So there it is, folks. The kingdom is going to be torn away, but not entirely, because Jesus has got to come from this line. Then the Lord raised up Hadad the Edomite, a member of Edom's royal family, to be Solomon's adversary. Years before, David had defeated Edom. Joab, his army commander, had stayed to bury some of the Israelite soldiers who had died in battle. While there, they killed every male in Edom. Joab and the army of Israel had stayed there for 6 months, killing them. Petty what? I really don't get how they turn from God, knowing what he can do to them. Yep. And the flips. Am I back? Am I back? Am I back? Am I back? He's back. He's back. He's back. Am I back? I think I'm back. Yeah, that was me. YouTube just said I had an unstable condition. It's the second time that's made me laugh in 2 minutes. What I said back to Petty Bois' comment there was, and they should know what the Lord can do for them in 1 Kings 4, where they flourish and he's with them and they got wisdom and they're content and happy. But today, people reject Jesus, knowing what he'll do to them in judgment, and they miss out on what he can do for them in life, choosing some lesser existence. It is just existence without Jesus. It's not life. Verse 19, Pharaoh grew very fond of Hadad, and he gave him his wife's sister in marriage, the sister of Queen Tarpenes. She bore him a son named Genubath. Tarpenes raised him in Pharaoh's palace among Pharaoh's own sons. When the news reached Hadad in Egypt that David and his commander Joab were both dead, he said to Pharaoh, "Let me return to my own country." "Why?" Pharaoh asked him. What do you lack here that makes you want to go home?" "Nothing," he replied, "but even so, please let me return home." God also raised up Rezin. Hey, Sue Roberts, welcome on in. 1 Kings 11. Verse 22, 23. God also raised up Rezin, son of Eliada, as Solomon's adversary. Rezin had fled from his master, King Hadadezer of Zobah, and had become the leader of a gang of rebels. After David conquered Hadadezer, Rezin and his men fled to Damascus, where he became king. Rezin was Israel's bitter adversary for the rest of Solomon's reign, and he made trouble just as Hadad did. Rezin hated Israel intensely and continued to reign in Aram. For those just joining us, Solomon had decided to have 700 wives and 300 concubines, and then decided to worship their gods of Ashtoreth, Molech, and Chemosh. So God is going to take the kingdom from him. Another rebel leader was Jeroboam, son of Nebat, one of Solomon's own officials. He came from the town of Zeradah in Ephraim, and his mother was Zeruah, a widow. This is the story behind his rebellion. Solomon was rebuilding the supporting terraces and repairing the walls of the city of his father David. Jeroboam was a very capable young man, and when Solomon saw how industrious he was, he put him in charge of the labor force from the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, the descendants of Joseph. One day, as Jeroboam was leaving Jerusalem, the prophet Ahijah from Shiloh met him along the way. Ahijah was wearing a new cloak. The two of them were alone in a field. And Ahijah took hold of the new cloak he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. Then he said to Jeroboam, "Take 10 of these pieces, for this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I am about to tear the kingdom from the hand of Solomon, and I will give 10 of the tribes to you. But I will leave him one tribe for the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. For Solomon has abandoned me and worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh, the god of Moab, and Molech, the god of the Ammonites. He has not followed my ways and done what is pleasing in my sight. He has not obeyed my decrees and regulations as David his father did. But I will not take the entire kingdom from Solomon at this time. For the sake of my servant David, the one whom I choose and who obeyed my commands and decrees, I will keep Solomon as leader for the rest of his life. But I will take the kingdom away from his son and give 10 tribes to you. His son will have one tribe, so that the descendants of David, my servant, will continue to reign, shining like a lamp in Jerusalem, the city I have chosen to be the place for my name. I will place you over the throne of Israel, and you will rule over that your heart desires. All that your heart desires, If you listen to what I tell you and follow my ways and do whatever I consider to be right, and if you obey my decrees and commands as my servant David did, then I will always be with you. I will establish an enduring dynasty for you as I did for David, and I will give Israel to you. Because of Solomon's sin, I will punish the descendants of David, though not forever." Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam, but he fled to King Shishak of Egypt and stayed there until Solomon died. The rest of the events in Solomon's reign, including all his deeds and his wisdom, are recorded in the book of the Acts of Solomon. Solomon ruled in Jerusalem over all Israel for 40 years. When he died, he was buried in the city of David, named for his father. Then his son, Rehoboam, became the next king. So church is about to split majorly because of turning their hearts to false gods again. One thing that strikes me there in 1 Kings 11 is old age doesn't bring repentance. It won't cure like a debauched heart. If you can still have access to it, you'll get it. Like, sin must be crucified. It must be ruthlessly dealt with. Otherwise, it's just going to be there, and worse as we get older. And you know that in his record that's coming up, like, he had everything, but his whole message is like, oh, everything's just vanity and vexation. You gotta come to Jesus, man. We keep seeing this. Okay, 1 Kings chapter 12. The northern tribes revolt. Rehoboam went to Shechem, where all Israel had gathered to make him king. When Jeroboam, son of Nebat, heard of this, he returned from Egypt, for he had fled to Egypt to escape from King Solomon. The leaders of Israel summoned him, and Jeroboam and the whole assembly of Israel went to speak with Rehoboam. Your father was a hard master, they said. Lighten the harsh labor demands and heavy taxes that your father imposed on us. Then we will be your loyal subjects. It's like, no, we've read 1 Kings 4. We know that you're just moaning for the sake of it to get your way. We know that church flourished under Solomon and it was a peace time of prosperity. You ever met that person that just always moans? Just always moans just to get his way or her way. Here they are in 1 Kings 12. Rehoboam replied, give me 3 days to think this over, then come back for my answer. So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam discussed the matter with the older men who had counseled his father Solomon. What is your advice? He asked. How should I answer these people? The older counselors replied, if you are willing to be a servant to these people today and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your loyal subjects. But Rehoboam rejected the advice of the older men and instead asked the opinion of the young men who had grown up with him and were now his advisors. What is your advice? He asked them. How should I answer these people who want me to lighten the burdens imposed by my father? The young man replied, this is what you should tell those complainers who want a lighter burden. My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Yes, my father laid heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them even heavier. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions. 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to hear Rehoboam's decision, just as the king had ordered. But Rehoboam spoke harshly to the people, for he rejected the advice of the older counselors and followed the counsel of his younger advisors. He told the people, my father laid heavy burdens on you, but I am going to make them even heavier. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions. So the king paid no attention to the people. This turn of events was the will of the Lord, for it fulfilled the Lord's words to Jeroboam, son of Nebat, through the prophet Ahijah from Shiloh. When all Israel realized that the king had refused to listen to them, they responded, down with the dynasty of David. We have no interest in the son of Jesse. Back to your homes, O Israel. Look out for your own house, O David. Classic members meeting, or AGM. So the people of Israel returned home. But Rehoboam continued to rule over the Israelites who lived in the towns of Judah. King Rehoboam sent Adoniram, who was in charge of forced labor, to restore order. But when the people of Israel, but The people of Israel stoned him to death. When the news reached King Rehoboam, he quickly jumped into his chariot and fled to Jerusalem. And to this day, the northern tribes of Israel have refused to be ruled by a descendant of David. When the people of Israel learned of Jeroboam's return from Egypt, they called an assembly and made him king over all Israel. So only the tribe of Judah remained loyal to the family of David. And who is the Lion of the tribe of Judah? Jesus. Shemaiah's prophecy. When Rehoboam arrived at Jerusalem, he mobilized the men of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 select troops, to fight against the men of Israel and to restore the kingdom to himself. But God said to Shemaiah, the man of God, "Say to Rehoboam, son of Solomon, king of Judah, and to all the people of Judah and Benjamin, and to the rest of the people, this is what the Lord says: Do not fight against your relatives, the Israelites. Go back home, for what has happened is my doing." So they obeyed the message of the Lord and went home as the Lord had commanded. Remember, it's his doing because of the judgment against Solomon. And even the whole king's setup was not the will of the Lord. But the Lord often brings his purposes through fallen individuals doing fallen, nasty stuff. Great providence of God, do. His oft perplexing ways are ordered right. See how they rise up. Verse 25. Jeroboam then built up the city of Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim, and it became his capital. Later, he went and built up the town of Peniel. Jeroboam thought to himself, "Unless I am careful, the kingdom will return to the dynasty of David. When these people go to Jerusalem to offer sacrifices at the temple of the Lord, they will again give their allegiance to Rehoboam of Judah. They will kill me and make him their king instead." So, on the advice of his counselors, the king made 2 gold calves. He said to the people, "It is too much trouble for you to worship in Jerusalem. Look, Israel, these are the gods who brought you out of Egypt." We've seen that in Exodus. He placed these calf idols in Bethel and in Dan at either end of his kingdom. But this became a great sin, for the people worshipped the idols, traveling as far north as Dan to worship the one there. Jeroboam also erected buildings at the pagan shrines and ordained priests from the common people, those who were not from the priestly tribe of Levi. And Jeroboam instituted a religious festival in Bethel, held on the 15th day of the 8th month, in imitation of the annual festival of shelters in Judah. There at Bethel, he himself offered sacrifices to the calves he had made, and he appointed priests for the pagan shrines he had made. So on the 15th day of the 8th month, a day that he himself has designated, Jeroboam offered sacrifices on the altar at Bethel. He instituted a religious festival for Israel, and he went up to the altar to burn incense. Oh dear, I thought things were going quite well. Let's go back to 1 Kings chapter 4, where church was flourishing. 1 Kings chapter 13. A prophet denounces Jeroboam. At the Lord's command, a man of God from Judah went to Bethel, arriving there just as Jeroboam was approaching the altar to burn incense. There, at the Lord's command, he shouted, "Oh, altar, altar, this is what the Lord says. A child named Josiah will be born into the dynasty of David. On you he will sacrifice the priests from the pagan shrines who come here to burn incense, and human bones will be burned on you." The same day the man of God gave a sign to prove his message. He said, "The Lord has promised to give this sign. This altar will split apart, and its ashes will be poured out on the ground." When King Jeroboam heard the man of God speaking against the altar at Bethel, he pointed at him and shouted, "Seize that man!" But instantly the king's hand became paralyzed in that position, and he couldn't pull it back. At the same time, a wide crack appeared in the altar, and the ashes poured out, just as the man of God had predicted in his message from the Lord. The king cried out to the man of God, "Please ask the Lord your God to restore my hand again." So the man of God prayed to the Lord, and the king's hand was restored, and he could move it again. Then the king said to the man of God, "Come to the palace with me and have something to eat, and I will give you a gift." But the man of God said to the king, "Even if you gave me half of everything you own, I would not go with you. I would not eat or drink anything in this place. For the Lord gave me this command: you must not eat or drink anything while you are there, and do not return to Judah by the same way you came." So he left Bethel and went home another way. It's interesting that the king there, he's all for the prophet, like, please make him fix my hand. Like, he wants his fortunes altered by the church guy. But he wasn't happy that the church guy pointed out his sin. But which is more important, that the word of the Lord through people convicts us so we can repent to become like Jesus and have full life, or we just use church as a crutch to get little things fixed in our lives and then get all moody if he doesn't do it the way we want? It's the same today. As it happened, there was an old prophet living in Bethel, and his sons came home and told him what the man of God had done in Bethel that day. They also told their father what the man had said to the king. So the old prophet asked them, "Which way did he go?" So they showed their father which road the man of God had taken. "Quick, saddle the donkey," the old man said. So they saddled the donkey for him, and he mounted it. Then he rode after the man of God and found him sitting under a great tree. The old prophet asked him, "Are you the man of God who came from Judah?" "Yes, I am," he replied. Then he said to the man of God, "Come home with me and eat some food." "No, I cannot," he replied. "I am not allowed to eat or drink anything here in this place, for the Lord gave me this command: you must not eat or drink anything while you are there, and do not return to Judah by the same way you came." But the old prophet answered, "I am a prophet too, just as you are, and an angel gave me this command from the Lord: bring him home with you so he can have something to eat and drink." But the old man was lying to him. So they went back together, and the man of God ate and drank at the prophet's home. Then, while they were sitting at the table, a command from the Lord came to the old prophet. He cried out to the man of God from Judah, "This is what the Lord says: you have defied the word of the Lord and have disobeyed the command the Lord your God gave you. You came back to this place and ate and drink where he told you not to eat or drink. Because of this, your body will not be buried in the grave of your ancestors." After the man of God had finished eating and drinking, the old prophet saddled his own donkey for him, and the man of God started off again. But as he was traveling along, a lion came out and killed him. His body lay there on the road with the donkey and the lion standing beside it. People who passed by saw the body lying in the road and the lion standing beside it, and they went and reported it in Bethel, where the old prophet lived. When the prophet heard the report, he said, "Is it the man of God who disobeyed the Lord's command? The Lord has fulfilled his word by causing the lion to attack and kill him." Then the prophet said to his sons, "Saddle a donkey for me." So they saddled a donkey, and he went out and found the body lying in the road. The donkey and lion were still standing there beside it, for the lion had not eaten the body nor attacked the donkey. So the prophet laid the body of the man of God on the donkey and took it back to the town to mourn over him and bury him. He laid his body, he laid the body in his own grave, crying out in grief, "Oh, my brother!" Afterward, the prophet said to his sons, "When I die, bury me in the grave where the man of God is buried. Lay my bones beside his bones." For the message the Lord told him to proclaim against the altar in Bethel and against the pagan shrines in the towns of Samaria will certainly come true. But even after this, Jeroboam did not turn from his evil ways. He continued to choose the priests from the common people. He appointed anyone who wanted to become a priest for the pagan shrines. This became a great sin and resulted in the utter destruction of Jeroboam's dynasty from the face of the earth. It is the halfway mark. Please take 30 seconds. Grab yourself an orange squash, a fruit cake, a cheese stick, a pepperoni. And we will gather back for 1 Kings chapter 14. Things are about to get hot. Incidentally, do you turf your ministers out if they preach convicting messages? Do you want church to just sort out your temporary lives? Or are you willing to ask the Lord that he would speak to through the ministers, that you would become more like Jesus, even if that's a tough path? Are these Old Testament readings enabling us to get to that point? It is 1 Kings chapter 14. Ahijah's prophecy against Jeroboam. At that time, Jeroboam's son Abijah became very sick. So Jeroboam told his wife, "Disguise yourself so that no one will recognize you as my wife. Then go to the prophet Ahijah at Shiloh, the man who told me I would become king. Take him a gift of 10 loaves of bread, some cakes, and a jar of honey, and ask him what will happen to the boy." So Jeroboam's wife went to Ahijah's home at Shiloh. He was an old man now and could no longer see. But the Lord had told Ahijah, Jeroboam's wife will come here pretending to be someone else. She will ask you about her son, for he is very sick. Give her the answer I give you." So when Ahijah heard her footsteps at the door, he called out, "Come in, wife of Jeroboam. Why are you pretending to be someone else?" Then he told her, "I have bad news for you. Give your husband Jeroboam this message from the Lord, the God of Israel. I promoted you from the ranks of the common people and made you ruler over my people Israel. I ripped the kingdom away from the family of David and gave it to you. But you have not been like my servant David, who obeyed my commands and followed me with all his heart and always did whatever I wanted. You have done more evil than all who lived before you. You have made other gods for yourself and have made me furious with your gold calves. And since you have turned your back on me, I will bring disaster on your dynasty and will destroy every one of your male descendants, slave and free alike, anywhere in Israel. I will burn up your royal dynasty as one burns up trash until it is all gone. The members of Jeroboam's family who die in the city will be eaten by dogs, and those who die in the field will be eaten by vultures. I, the Lord, have spoken." Then Ahijah said to Jeroboam's wife, "Go on home, and when you enter the city, the child will die. All Israel will mourn for him and bury him. He is the only member of your family who will have a proper burial. For this child is the only good thing that the Lord, the God of Israel, sees in the entire family of Jeroboam. In addition, the Lord will raise up a king over Israel who will destroy the family of Jeroboam. This will happen today, even now. Then the Lord will shake his reed whipped about in a stream. He will uproot the people of Israel from this good land that he gave their ancestors and will scatter them beyond the Euphrates River. For they have angered the Lord with the Ahasherah poles they have set up for worship. As Jonty's not in the room, those were basically giant phallic statues of sex worship. He will abandon Israel because Jeroboam sinned and made Israel sin along with him. So Jeroboam's wife returned to Tirzah, and the child died just as she walked through the door of her home, and all Israel buried him and mourned for him, as the Lord had promised through the prophet Ahijah. The rest of the events in Jeroboam's reign, including all the wars and how he ruled, are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. Jeroboam reigned in Israel 22 years. When Jeroboam died, his son Nadab became the next king. If you are tuning in as a member of another religion, which isn't Trinitarian and which doesn't come to the Father through the divine high priest Jesus, I hope these chapters speak to you about the seriousness of not coming to Jesus as Lord. And what an opportunity this is for us all to get our religion in order. Because if it's not through Jesus, it's not truth. That's actually what Jesus says. And look how angry the Father gets when we make a mockery of religion by coming up, trying to get to him through other means and idols. It's serious stuff we're dealing with here. Meanwhile, Rehoboam, son of Solomon, was king in Judah. He was 41 years old when he became king, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem. The king of the city of the Lord, the city the Lord had chosen from among all the tribes of Israel as the place to honor his name. Rehoboam's mother was Naamah, an Ammonite woman. During Rehoboam's reign, the people of Judah did what was evil in the Lord's sight, provoking his anger with their sin, for it was even worse than that of their descendants. Ancestors. Sorry, wrong direction. Ancestors. For they also built for themselves pagan shrines and set up sacred pillars and Asherah poles on every high hill and under every green tree. There were even male and female shrine prostitutes throughout the land. The people imitated the detestable practices of the pagan nations that the Lord had driven from the land ahead of the Israelites. Because, of course, the sex thing has always been a picture of Jesus and the church. That's why it's wonderful, a picture of it. And the family unit as church that comes forth from that picture. And look, it's all become cheap, seedy, and evil, skewered and debauched. In the 5th year of King Rehoboam's reign, King Shishak of Egypt came up and attacked Jerusalem. He ransacked the treasuries of the Lord's temple and the royal palace. He stole everything, including all the gold shields Solomon had made. King Rehoboam later replaced them with bronze shields as substitutes, and he entrusted them to the care of the commanders of the guard who protected the entrance to the royal palace. Whenever the king went to the temple of the Lord, the guards would also take the shields and then return them to the guard room. Nothing's even safe anymore. The rest of the events of Rehoboam's reign and everything he did are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah. There was constant war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam. When Rehoboam died, he was buried among his ancestors in the city of David. His mother was Naamah, an Amorite woman. Then his son, Abijam, became the next king. We are now in the fourth. Please take a minute, shuffle in your seats. We may have a glimmer of hope in the next chapter. We may. Learning a lot about Jesus in this one and the exclusivity of our religion and what happens to church when we throw that away for giant winkies. Don't do it. 1 Kings 15. Abijam rules in Judah. Abijam began to rule over Judah in the 18th year of Jeroboam's reign in Israel. He reigned in Jerusalem 3 years. His mother was Maacah, the granddaughter of Absalom. He committed the same sins as his father before him, and he was not faithful to the Lord his God, as his ancestor David had been. But for David's sake, the Lord his God allowed his descendants to continue ruling, shining like a lamp, and he gave Abijam a son to rule after him in Jerusalem. It's amazing now, like David was after God's own heart. He did do a fairly decent job. But did you see a few chapters ago, they're all like, we reject David and everything he's ever done. How quickly good church leaders are forgotten and unappreciated, and their teachings just go out the window. Guard against that. We all must guard against that. Forget the rubbish ones. Treasure the good ones. Verse 5. For David had done what was pleasing in the Lord's sight and had obeyed the Lord's commands through his life, except in the affair concerning Uriah the Hittite. There was war between Abijam and Jeroboam, not in Park End, truly. There was war between Abijam and Jeroboam. I tell you what, all this brings me to the point to say, if I stop preaching Jesus and lifting him up, sack me, and then publicly declare we will have nothing to do with the ministry of Owen, like they did with David here. But you'd have good reason to do it with me. There you go. Sue Roberts, I hand. Verse 6, there was war between Abijam and Jeroboam throughout Abijam's reign. The rest of the events in Abijam's reign and everything he did are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah. There was constant war between Abijam and Jeroboam. When Abijam died, he was buried in the city of David. Then his son Asa became the next king. Asa began to rule over Judah in the 20th year of Jeroboam's reign in Israel. He reigned in Jerusalem 41 years. His grandmother was Maacah, the granddaughter of Absalom. Asa did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight. We've got there. We are back on track. And as his ancestor David had done. He banished the male and female shrine prostitutes from the land and got rid of all of the idols his ancestors had made. He even deposed his grandmother Maacah from her position as queen mother because she had made an obscene Asherah pole. She's like an old lady at it. He cut down her obscene pole and burned it in the Kidron Valley. Although the pagan shrines were not removed, Asa's heart remained completely faithful to the Lord throughout his life. Sue Roberts, dirty old woman. Yep, you said it. That's the King James Version, I think, way of putting it, isn't it? Verse 15, he brought into the temple of the Lord the silver and the gold and the various items that he and his father had dedicated. There was constant war between King Asa of Judah and King Baasha of Israel. Oh, look, Israel have switched now as well. King Baasha of Israel invaded Judah and fortified the city of David. Oh, sorry, didn't turn the page. And fortified Ramah in order to prevent anyone from entering or leaving King Asa's territory in Judah. Asa responded by removing all the silver and gold that was left in the treasuries of the temple of the Lord and the royal palace. He sent it home with some of his officials to Ben-Hadad, son of Tabrimmon, son of Hezion, the king of Aram, who was ruling in Damascus, along with this message. Let there be a treaty between you and me like the one between your father and my father. See, I am sending you a gift of silver and gold. Break your treaty with King Baasha of Israel so that he will leave me alone. Ben-Hadad agreed to King Asa's request and sent the commanders of his army to attack the towns in Israel. They conquered the towns of Aijon Dan, Abel Beth Maacah, and all Kinnereth, and all the land of Naphtali. As soon as Baasha of Israel heard what was happening, he abandoned his project of fortifying Ramah and withdrew to Tirzah. Then King Asa sent an order throughout Judah, requiring that everyone, without exception, help to carry away the building stones and timbers that Baasha had been using to fortify Ramah. Asa used these materials to fortify the town of Geba in Benjamin and the town of Mizpah. The rest of the events of Asa's reign, the extent of his power, everything he did, and the names of the cities he built are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah. In his old age, his feet became diseased. When Asa died, he was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. Then Jehoshaphat, Asa's son, became the next king. Maybe tomorrow on Facebook, we'll post a map of the different kings and running down the different kingdoms. And I think something like 6 or 7 different kings switch in Israel whilst Asa is in Judah. And then you can play good king, bad king. Oh, he was good, he's bad. He was rubbish. He's good. Oh, demon worshipper. Oh, he was good. Not too many in the good category. Nadab, son of Jeroboam, began to rule over Israel in the 2nd year of King Asa's reign in Judah. He reigned in Israel 2 years, but he did what was evil in the Lord's sight and followed the example of his father, continuing the sins that Jeroboam had led Israel to commit. Then Baasha, son of Ahijah from the tribe of Issachar, plotted against Nadab and assassinated him while he and the Israelite army were laying siege to the Philistine town of Gibbethon. Baasha killed Nadab in the 3rd year of King Asa's reign in Judah, and he became the next king of Israel. He immediately slaughtered all the descendants of King Jeroboam, so that not one of the royal family was left, just as the Lord had promised concerning Jeroboam by the prophet Ahijah from Shiloh. This was done because Jeroboam had provoked the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, by the sins he had committed and the sins he had led Israel to commit. The rest of the events in Nadab's reign and everything he did are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. There was constant war between King Asa of Judah and King Baasha of Israel. Baasha, son of Ahijah, began to rule over all Israel in the 3rd year of King Asa's reign in Judah. But he did what was evil in the Lord's sight and followed the example of Jeroboam, continuing the sins that Jeroboam had led Israel to commit. Isn't it amazing that those words are never said of the king, the son of David, the ruler of Israel, Jesus? It never says he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Isn't that amazing? And that's how we're saved, because of that. Okay, 1 Kings chapter 16. The message from the Lord was delivered to King Baasha. This message was delivered from the Lord to King Baasha by the prophet Jehu, son of Hanani. I lifted you out of the dust to make you ruler of my people Israel, but you have followed the evil example of Jeroboam. You have provoked my anger by causing my people Israel to sin. So now I will destroy you and your family, just as I destroyed the descendants of Jeroboam, son of Nebat. The members of Baasha's family who die in the city will be eaten by dogs, and those who die in the field will be eaten by vultures. The rest of the events in Baasha's reign and the extent of his power are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. Excuse me, I need one of these. When Baasha died, he was buried in Tirzah. Then his son Elah became the next king. The message from the Lord against Baasha and his family came through the prophet Jehu, son of Hanani. It was delivered because Baasha had done what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as the family of Jeroboam had done, and also because Baasha had destroyed the family of Jeroboam. The Lord's anger was provoked by Baasha's sins. Elah, son of Baasha, began to rule over Israel in the 26th year of King Asa's reign in Judah. He reigned in the city of Tirzah for 2 years. Then Zimri, who commanded half of the royal chariots, made plans to kill him. Just because when Jesus isn't in charge, everybody starts killing each other. One day in Tirzah, Elah was getting drunk at the home of Arza, the supervisor of the palace. Zimri walked in and struck him down and killed him. This happened in the 27th year of King Asa's reign in Judah. Then Zimri became the next king. Zimri immediately killed the entire royal family of Baasha, leaving him not even a single male child, and even destroyed distant relatives and friends. So Zimri destroyed the dynasty of Baasha as the Lord had promised through the prophet Jehu. This happened because of all the sins Baasha and his son Elah had committed, and because of the sins they led Israel to commit. They provoked the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, with their worthless idols, their non-Jesus gods. The rest of the events in Elah's reign and everything he did are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. 3 minutes left. Zimri began to rule over Israel in the 27th year in King Asa's reign in Judah, but his reign in Tirzah lasted only 7 days. The army of Israel was then attacking the Philistine town of Gibbethon. When they heard that Zimri had committed treason and had assassinated the king, that very day they chose Omri, commander of the army, as the new king of Israel. So Omri led the entire army of Israel up from Gibbethon to attack Tirzah, Israel's capital. When Zimri saw that the city had been taken, he went into the citadel of the palace and burned it down over himself and died in the flames. For he too had done what was evil in the Lord's sight. He followed the example of Jeroboam in all the sins he had committed and led Israel to commit. The rest of the events in Zimri's reign and his conspiracy are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. That was heavy stuff, dark stuff. Elah, death comes upon him. Death, 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 civil war in the ancient church. And the church so easily going back to false idols. So, Bible Hour, we leave tonight thinking about the importance of the diligence of keeping Jesus as Lord and the reward we have in life of doing that, and the utter ruin if we don't. George, how hard it must have been to trust when that's going on in your country. Yeah, like the faithful lot. Well, else, yeah, I bet people probably went south. Let's go to Asa. He's doing a bit better, at least until he doesn't. I think church is in a bit of a dearth now with all of its powerless personal academia and non-Jesus centered exegesis and interests and hobby horses and sermons. And let's get back to Jesus and church life, people. That changes the world. That changes the world. All right, folks. Tomorrow along comes Elijah. For those who watched 2 hours of Mendelssohn today to get ready from Elijah, I'm sorry about that. It turns out that we did not make it to Elijah, but you're ahead of the game. You're ahead of the game for tomorrow. Unless the Lord comes back or Sky cut my cord, we will be back here at 9 p.m. tomorrow. Howell George, they are so far from Moses' law. I'm telling you, it's all downhill after the Pentateuch. How hard it must have been to trust when that's what's going. Oh yeah, you have already said that one. I missed. Not to mention all the Asherah poles. Yeah, well, we touched on that a bit earlier on. Thanks so much. Sorry I was late. Good night. Naboth's vineyard. Oosh. Yeah, that god of sex turned many kings away. Many kings away. As it does today. Don't worry, Sue, we had an internet pause. You didn't miss much as you think. All right, Chris, lay off. Trying our best here, you know. Okay, folks, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Adios.